Deputy Broughan.
Thanks, Vascan. And I'm delighted to have a brief opportunity to speak on this critically important matter this afternoon. Firstly, I'd like to extend my deepest sympathies to the family of Shane O'Farrell, who are reliving the horrible night of his tragic death and are still waiting for justice almost 7 years later. And 23-year-old Shane, of course, was cycling along the N2 between Castleblaney and Carrick Cross on the 2nd of August 2011 when he was killed in a hit-and-run by a man who clearly should not have been on our Irish roads, Lascan. Zygmantas Grzyuska, the 39-year-old Lithuanian driver, had 42 previous convictions, had breached bail 18 times and had been convicted of theft in Newry just 3 weeks before he killed Shane and the Garda Síochána, I think, were informed of that, Minister, weren't they? He shouldn't have been on our roads, clearly, on the 2nd of August, and tragically Shane should still be with us. Shane's mother, Lucia, and family, of course, are bravely continuing to highlight the ineptitude of areas of implementation of road safety and traffic law, and their grave dissatisfaction with the GSOC report into the investigation, a report which, astonishingly, Lascan took 6 years to produce and publish. But the O'Farrells are not alone in this fight. As the Minister knows, I work closely with Ms Susan Gray and her colleagues of the Park Civil Society Group, the Road Safety Group. And Park, of course, supports many families, including the O'Farrells, whose cases were sent to GSOC for investigation. And many of those families, of course, have also been left bitterly disappointed at the outcome of a GSOC report and the lack of accountability amongst those involved in investigating road traffic collisions killed. Of course, we don't really have a statutory, transparent, investigative system for investigating the tragic road deaths and serious injuries. And your government and previous governments have done nothing to bring such a process about. There are so many problems in creating a much safer environment on Irish roads to discuss, but I'll just highlight one or two in particular. On the 18th of May last, I received a PQ reply, finally, from the Road Safety Authority, which states, and I quote, "The number of drivers out of the 9,449 drivers disqualified in court in 2017 that surrendered their licences to the RSA's NDLS was 1,289, end quote. So, Minister, 8,000, an astonishing 8,160 convicted, disqualified drivers in 2017 were still driving around. And I mean, how would the Gardaí know they're disqualified? You gave, and the Minister of Transport gave me some disconcerting replies on that very matter before. So how did the Gardaí know? In the north, for example, the PSNI, of course, have handheld devices roadside so they can check the status of a driver's licence. And I've been asking recently the Minister for Transport and possibly yourself about introducing the similar system. Why hasn't it been done? And the opaque nature, of course, Lascan, of answering my PQs by the Departments of Justice, Transport and the RSA, and indeed in some cases by your department, Minister, in not answering questions at all, is so disingenuous and certainly seems to indicate that there are things to hide and very serious inefficiencies and discrepancies. Lack of attention to the business of your department. For example, we've been waiting for almost 3 years for clarification on whether 521 drivers disqualified in court for dangerous driving causing death or serious injury between January 2013 and March 2015 had already been disqualified at the time of the collision. Now, on December 21st in 2015, your colleague, Deputy Pascal Donoghue, told me it wasn't possible, in an astonishing reply, he said it wasn't possible to ascertain if people were disqualified at the time of a collision or indeed at the time of a conviction. And he never did anything by the time he left the Department of Transport to bring about any clarity on that. I've had to write, of course, to yourself, Lascan, and to the CAN about outstanding PQ replies from the Department of Justice that we're still waiting for. So why the secrecy, Minister? Why is there such a lack of joined-up thinking with supported, free-for-purpose IT systems for the implementation, at long last, of basic road traffic legislation? So these are just a couple of the things that occur at this tragic discussion. But I want to say, finally, Lascan, that I very strongly support the request for a public inquiry, I believe, for an urgent commission investigation into the tragic death of Shane O'Farrell. I support that call, and I hope, Minister, that these type of tragedies don't reoccur on our roads. It's a very serious responsibility, and your department needs to invigilate it much more effectively. Thanks, Can.
Thank you. And the final contributor.